Hi, my name is Haley, and this is Moon Brews. Hello, welcome back to Moon Brews. Today we are covering a haunted location, but before I get into that, I have such exciting news. I have I have added Moon Brews to YouTube. So we're now in a video format, and it is so exciting to upload a video and be back in iMovie and edit like that, because I used to do so many fun videos like that, and audio is fun. I love audio. But I have noticed that the algorithm on Spotify and Apple Podcasts is super, super hard to get your show out there, and the algorithm has to be right. And it is a lot of advertising and marketing on my end through my Instagram and my TikTok and stuff. But I know YouTube works well with Google, and Google and YouTube together can have a higher stream of algorithms when it comes to podcast. I learned from somebody that if you are podcasting, here's a tip for you, that YouTube is one of the largest platforms for podcast. And a lot of the podcasts that are on YouTube don't have video feed. A lot of the times it's just the artwork of the podcast, right, with the audio format over it. Well, I took it a little bit further. So I'm starting to make my own little video intro, a fun little aesthetically pleasing picture with some moving parts to it while I tell my Moon Brew story on top of it. And it's been so fun. I posted 2 YouTube videos already, so please go to YouTube, subscribe, comment, do all the things that you need to. Get over there. I have my graphic designer at Ali Vav Design. Please go check her out. If you want work done, go check her out. She's on Instagram. You can find her there. Send her a DM. She is currently working on a, what is it called? An ambiance. The moving ambiances that you can search on YouTube. For example, you want a Christmas time ambiance where it's snow is falling, there's Christmas music in the background, there's a candle flickering. It sets your mood up perfectly. So that's what I want to do with Moon Brews. I want to have my audio over some sort of ambiance that my graphic designer is creating, and I'm super, super excited for it. So please stay tuned for that. For now, I'm just doing my own video edits, own video pictures on there. But I promise you it's going to get so much better. So please go over there and subscribe if you want to watch Moon Brews on a video format. And a little more news. There is some astrological news that I want to let you guys know. Saturn and Mercury are no longer in retrograde. So hallelujah. They both ended their retrograde in late November of 2025. So this means the period of disruption and miscommunication associated with Mercury in retrograde is now over. And there may be a greater sense of clarity and movement to move forward to. So that's great news. That is fantastic news. And really, really quick, I'm going to do a Yule episode coming very soon. Yule is coming up on the winter solstice of December 21st, which is the darkest day of the year. And we're going to talk about, maybe we can talk about Krampus or some dark, spooky Christmas things. But stay tuned for a Yule episode because we are entering the season of Yule very, very, very soon. So without further ado, let's move the planchette to the main part of the story. So like I said before, we're covering a haunted location today. So at our haunted location, the popcorn is popping, there are thrill screams on the horizon, and bright flashing neon lights that fill the sky. You have now entered the haunted Lake Shawnee Abandoned Amusement Park. Admission is a one-way entry. Have you ever heard of Lake Shawnee? I believe I had from whatever ghost shows that I used to watch way back when, but I never really dove deep into it, so I wanted to take, obviously, the time to research it and let you guys know more about it, because it was creepy and bizarre, and the history behind it is one that is super striking to me, and I am fascinated by this population, so stay tuned. So it is considered one of the world's most haunted locations, which is a huge title to have. This abandoned amusement park is located in West Virginia. West Virginia, Mountain Mama. Even though the amusement park is abandoned, you can purchase tickets online to visit the park. So there's daylight tours, and then there's also overnight tours. And it does look like there are tickets, quote unquote, per season, whenever that is. I believe it's during like Halloween time, spooky season time, because when I was doing my research and trying to buy tickets for November, I was unable to. So it looks like the website is like not functional any other part of the year except for Halloween time, which is like an opportunity missed. To like, ghosts aren't just around. I mean, everybody should know this. Ghosts aren't just around during the haunted season. I mean, the veil is thinner, sure, but you could still market and like get a lot of people there and get thrills and, you know, see ghosts other times of the year. But apparently you can only visit Lake Shawnee during the spooky season. And they call this attraction the Dark Carnival. So let me know if you've drove down to Rock, West Virginia and have visited the Dark Carnival. So let's get to know this place a little bit, the history of Lake Shawnee. So let's go to the very, very beginning. Our story starts in 1775. Mitchell Clay, an English settler, moved his entire family to Lake Shawnee and settled over 800 acres of land. Why the hell does one need 800 acres of land? That is insane. I'm looking for houses now to buy, and I can barely find a lot that's 1 acre where I am. Mitchell and Phoebe Clay were the first English settlers of Mercer County in 1775. You can assume they were the first to encounter natives living on this land. The Mitchell family had 16 children. 16 children. There are not many records of what had happened once they settled on the land, or rather who they stole the land from. I don't know if this is because lack of documentation that occurs in 1775, or rather they don't want to document doing horrific things to the natives there, but we can assume that bad things had erupted soon after settlement. So there's a trigger warning for child harm here, so if you don't want to hear that, please skip forward. Soon after settling on the land, 3 of the Clay children were murdered. While Bartley and Tabitha Clay were on the property doing chores, allegedly, the native Shawnee Indians captured and killed them both. And then later, a 3rd child was taken captive and burned at the stake, also by the Shawnee Indians, allegedly. After the murders, Clay received the bodies of his slain children and laid them to rest on the property. Obviously, that's your first red flag. Being murdered so tragically, and especially at such a young age, definitely seeps into that soil there. They mark their graves with headstones that state the Daughters of the American Revolution. I don't want to get into English settlement too much because I know people probably have a lot of different opinions on this. Children don't deserve to die. Nobody deserves to be taken from their family and be burned at the stake at a very young age because there is a problem between the adults, right? The way it happened with English settlement, it shouldn't have gone the way it did. The Clay family probably shouldn't have taken 800 acres of land that belonged to the Native Americans for thousands and thousands of years. And it wasn't, they weren't just like taking lands, they were murdering people. And it was very violent and a war broke out. So none of those things should have happened. None of it should have happened. And the natives were pissed. So let's fast forward to around 1926. So Connell Snitto, a prominent businessman in the area, decided to purchase Lake Shawnee to establish rides and attractions on the land. His goal was to bring back life into this 800-acre land. He did so by installing swings and ponds and swimming holes, dance halls, speakeasies, and more. Honestly, a good time. He was making a good time. His amusement park did come to life and was successful for about 20 years until tragedy struck. There were 3 deaths that occurred on the property. 2 deaths were caused by drowning. One family was apparently in a canoe when it just started to capsize on the lake, and as a result, a little boy did drown. And apparently another little boy drowned after swimming in the swimming hole after his arm became like lodged in a drain, which is like the most horrific thing. All of this is horrific, but that is absolutely horrific. They later then filled this swimming hole, which is like sand, which is like so ominous to me. Maybe they realized that, you know, the pool and the drain, and it wasn't up to code, right? Obviously something was going wrong here. So filling it in with sand is maybe the best idea here. But like, then I started thinking about how many swimming holes like on our planet are just filled in with sand and dirt. And how many swimming pools are we just like walking on that we have no idea that are underneath our feet? So let's go to the 1940s or the 1960s. And I say that because reports differ. There was a death of a little girl that occurred at the park while she was swinging on the swinging carousel ride. So this little girl was riding that swinging ride and she was tragically killed after a delivery truck backed into the swing. So her swing made contact with the truck, and there are reports that she died instantly. There were reports that she was taken to the hospital and then later died at the hospital. Nothing really was straight here, but how freaking tragic is that? So after all these deaths and a failed inspection, Conley-Snidow's amusement park came to a close. And many believe a park like this was never meant to be placed onto native land to further disturb the tribes in death. So you can think about, were these deaths associated because the land ended up being cursed after English settlement back in 1775? By the 1980s, Lake Shawnee fell into the hands of a new owner. Businessman Gaylord White made it his goal to reopen the park once again. And you would think after a while these people would intuitively stop trying to open land on this 800-acre land that has nothing but tragedy occurring on it. And after multiple failed attempts of having any sort of amusement park, but businessmen will be businessmen. So as crews dug into the land, they uncovered Native American artifacts and skeletons. Let me tell you, you are fucked if you start digging and find Native American skeletons. I'm sorry, but nothing ever ends well when that happens. It's kind of like when you accidentally open a tomb up in Egypt and you let all of that out. It is exactly the same. You are just utterly screwed when that happens. With this discovery, the White family actually decided to stop digging, which I feel like never happens. I feel like the story would be and they continued and then everybody died. So they decided to stop digging, which honestly, good for you. In this moment, they followed their intuition and then later decided to not reopen the park and leave the park as it is. So the park, after all of this, was later just left as it was. And after skeleton remains were unearthed, they called in the local archaeologist. So these archaeologists further excavated the area and found 14 skeletons, most which were children that belonged to the Native American Shawnee tribe. They also discovered arrowheads, pottery, necklaces, and more Native American artifacts. These archaeologists did estimate that over this 800-acre land, that there were more than 3,000 Shawnee buried on this land where the amusement park now sits. 3,000 Shawnee. They believe this land was marked sacred and used as a Native American burial ground over thousands of years ago. And that is your problem, making an amusement park on top of sacred Native American land. Especially land that was taken violently away from the Native American people back in the war. People were slain, people were hurt, and this land, I mean, if you know anything about Native American culture, they are one with the land, they're one with the earth. They respect the earth and the ground and the materials that it comes with, and they are very, very sacred individuals. The connection that these people have with this land, this 800-acre land, is more than we would ever know. So taking it abruptly from them with violence on top of people being slain violently, it is just a recipe for disaster. And today, Lake Shawnee remains abandoned and haunted. So let's talk about the Lake Shawnee Native Americans. So who was the Shawnee tribe? They were Native Americans that lived on the property for more than 2,000 years. This land in particular was basically perfect for a tribe like this to survive on. There was rich soil, clear rivers, and a nearby cliff called the Indian Lookout. So Chief Hokueska, I hope I said that right, that translates to stalk of corn. He was a prominent leader of the Shawnee Nation. He led the tribe prior to the American Revolution War of 1775. He opposed European settlement on his lands and advocated for peace, especially after the Battle of Point Pleasant. So, which makes me so sad because a lot of the time these Native Americans too just wanted peace, and they just wanted to find a way to make do with these English settlers, and it didn't necessarily go the right way every single time. He was murdered by American militiamen at Fort Randolph during a diplomatic visit in November of 1777. His fellow Native Americans were outraged by his death, which is why you can think they may have stole the Clay children in the beginning of the story after they settled on their land. But that is just a theory. And lastly, let's talk about Tecumseh. Again, I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. This translates to shooting star. He was a Native American Shawnee warrior and chief. He became a primary leader of a multi-tribal confederacy in the 19th century. He was celebrated by most and considered a very strong leader that promoted his tribal unit. And that's everything that I have on the Lake Shawnee Native Americans. I just wanted to take the time to, talk about them a little bit. And to end this episode, I want to talk about a TV show that I watched called The Portals to Hell, Season 2, Episode 18 with Jack Osborne. I had never watched this show. It looks like, it came out in 2019 and ran about 3 seasons until 2022. I never watched this. I never knew it existed. Sorry, Jack Osborne, but it is a little bit of a lower quality show. It's nothing like big grand scheme, TV network things. Let me know if you watched this before, but this is the first and only episode that I've watched, and it was okay. It wasn't anything like Ghost Adventures or Ghost Hunters, nothing like that. They were basically 2 investigators who went to the scene. I'm pretty sure they had a very small camera crew, and they hired a few people like a Native American specialist, a psychic, and then the 2 investigators themselves went to explore Lake Shawnee. They also were talking to the landowner currently, his name is Chris, about some experiences that he had. So let's talk about the Native American specialist first. So they hired a Native American specialist, also known as a medicine man, to the investigation. It was a very short bit on the episode. And he basically explained how the settlers were very aggressive back in the day, and they cleared the fields by murdering the Native Americans ruthlessly. That is what that man had said. And he had no doubt that the deaths 200 years later resulted in negative energy that people currently feel on this land. They also hired a psychic to come to the scene, and she arrived blindfolded, in a car. And I'm assuming it's to, mask any way of her knowing, where she was, so she wouldn't be, biased in any way. And while working on the grounds and blindfolded, she explained how she was sensing people that were buried beneath the ground. She stated a, quote, pre-white settler feel, quote, and with that, I'm assuming that she's picking up something along the lines of, the English settlement, and she also felt the presence of a silhouette figure standing outside of the grounds. So psychics. We love psychics, right? But when it comes to television and things like that, it is hard to just trust and judge a psychic immediately. I'm not saying I don't believe her. She very much could be this awesome psychic, but I am weary sometimes when it comes to them because it is hard to try to be convinced by a psychic on a television show. I'd rather listen to EVPs or, see a shadowy figure in a photo for myself to make the determination of that investigation rather than that. But that is what she had said. The last part of the last part that she said about feeling the presence of a shadowy figure was interesting to me, because people who visit the land, so just people like me and you who go and visit during the dark carnival and stuff, that the dark carnival season that they have seen a 7-foot shadow cloaked figure out in the woods. So she was right on that. So the original Ferris wheel still stands on that ground today, and apparently at the 9 o'clock position, bucket number 10, people have seen a full body apparition here too. And the little girl who had died on the swings has been seen as well, hanging out around the swing carousel. And the swing in which she died currently has a pink ribbon attached to it to mark that place. They did do a little investigation. They didn't do any sort of EVPs, which I love EVPs. Why wouldn't you do them? They are to me, a gold mine. I mean, why wouldn't you? I don't know. So they didn't do any EVPs. They did a lot of REM pod work, which one REM pod was going absolutely nuts. There was no baseline to it at all. So that was interesting. And they did bring a second REM pod to the scene, and it reacted the same way. So they kind of concluded that it wasn't just a REM pod malfunction, that there was a lot of, electromagnetic energy in the area for whatever reason. And the area that they were at when this was happening was where the little girl had passed on the swing. At the very, very, very end of the show, honestly, that was I'm telling you, it was not the greatest episode, because that was truly everything that had happened. It was very much, I learned a lot of history from the show. That's where I got a lot of my notes from for the history and stuff. It wasn't too much of a paranormal proof in this episode, but the cameramen did capture a very large figure standing out in the cornfields. And they were all alone. They always tell you that. They were all alone in this amusement park. The owner wasn't even there. It was the two investigators and their small camera crew looking at the video footage that they were trying to capture some sort of spooky video feed, right, for the show. And while they were doing so, they were panning across like a cornfield. And there is a road behind the cornfield, like a few feet back, but they were shooting, I would say, half a mile down the cornfield. And there was a car that did come up behind the cornfield on the road, and it had its headlights on because it was pitch black outside. And as the car came and drove down the road, it lit up part of the cornfield. And as it did, it also lit up from behind in like a huge black dark figure. And you can see its head and the torso and the arms and the legs. Like it was 100% a human standing upright. And it was like a quick flash because the car just drove by. And that was spooky. I will say that was spooky. It is hard to determine if that was a human, if it was somebody else like out in the back. But it also coincides with the psychic who said she felt a cloaked figure or a dark shadowy figure out at the edge of the cornfield. And it also aligns with people who go to the dark carnival season and buy tickets and see a dark shadowy 7-foot figure. So that was the most compelling evidence that I had seen in that episode. But go ahead and check it out if you want to. I watched Portals of Hell Season 2, Episode 18 on Tubi, I believe. So Tubi is free if you want to go ahead and watch that. But yeah, that is my take on Lake Shawnee. Let me know if you've ever been there. It's not super, super close to me, but it's not like a plane away. So I very much am kind of interested in buying tickets for next spooky season. And again, if you have any spooky stories of your own, please send them to moonbrewspodcast@gmail.com and we may read your spooky tale.